Hello, everybody. I'm Sean O'Meara, and I'm a physician and a researcher passionate about reversing chronic disease and optimizing human beings. So I'm super excited to be invited to provide this lecture on the optimization of health utilizing innovative biomarkers for the Carnivore Summit. So I'm just so excited about Carnivore because the longer I've been carnivore and the longer I use it as a modality, it's one of my leading strategies to optimize human beings, the more benefit I see to it. So I'm just so excited about the future for carnivore. It's personally been almost 5 years now since I've been carnivore, just a little shy of 5. And I think this is great that we're doing this. So let's go. I'm excited to move on. So what I'm going to cover today, if those of you have heard me on podcasts, you know that I like to cover a lot visceral fat and biomarkers. So I'm going to cover that, but I'm going to be covering a lot of interesting and different materials. So something that I've never shared anywhere else. So I'm really excited to have saved it for the Carnivore Summit so you get to benefit. So real quick, big thanks to Judy. Is she awesome or what? I've always been so excited about Judy's material, her content, what she brings to the carnivore community, and the fact that she has invited me on her podcast, that we have talked about these important subjects, and she is a real advocate for optimizing people. So I just love her to death and what she's doing. So big kudos for her that putting this on and then including me, giving me an invitation to come to be with you to share this content. So the next thing I'll be talking about is carnivore is the best. It is the best way of eating that I have found, and that's why it is a pillar. It's one of my chief strategies to optimize human beings. But let me point out one thing. If carnivore is the best, and we're the best, those of us doing this, we need measurements. We need measurements to capture it. And let me just say, it is not fat. If we are dropping down and tracking cholesterols and lipids, we are falling prey to the problem with using those as metrics is they're just fraught with a lot of noise. Okay, signal is what really matters. Noise is distraction. And so, yeah, cholesterol seems to be the darling of the vegetarian and vegan community, the plant community, but we're not going to go there because it is just unhelpful. It doesn't really, if you follow cholesterol, it just doesn't really really matter to improve your health. And let me just ask you a question. How many of you have ever heard anybody in the world out of 7 billion people who have said, I got my cholesterol under control and completely changed my life? It just doesn't happen. It doesn't really improve anything except changing numbers. In some people's minds, that might be improvement. But when it comes down to health, which is how you look, how you appear, and how you perform, your quality of life, that's what health is about. Cholesterol doesn't play a role in it. But what does? We need those metrics to be able to say, we have this great strategy that you need to be aware of. And it's not us against them, okay? They do some things really good. But I do believe that we've got this better strategy, which is eating meat, that they're dismissing. So we got to help them out. We got to follow this new metric. And this new metric, I'm going to get into these biometrics, what they are in this particular lecture. All right, how are we going to measure? A lot of my lecture is going to be talking about MRIs, okay? MRIs are used conventionally right now in the conventional healthcare community, which I'm still an MD. I'm not super fond of how conventional, what's happened with the healthcare community because basically everybody's getting worse. They're not getting better. What is getting better is the healthcare system. They're being enriched. They're making more money. Big insurances make more money. Big pharma make more money. But if you follow patients going through human beings going through the system, they're just getting worse. And oh, by the way, so are the doctors. They're a part of this system. So everybody's falling apart. We've got to disrupt healthcare, okay? And carnivore may do it. Carnivore may, in fact, disrupt healthcare. And so just watch. I think we're going to be the focus of a lot of people who are making a lot of money. They're going to come after the carnivore diet. So we got to hold fast for that. That's a real possibility. I'm going to talk a little bit at the end about CTs, and we're going to look on inside of the body. What's happening inside the body when you go carnivore and you do these things? How do people change? And outside the body, some outside body changes that you probably aren't aware of that are happening as you get optimally healthy and going, including with the strategy going carnivore. And then we're going to talk about vascular changes. Okay, how does the cardiovascular system change going in the carnivore diet? And then I'm going to talk about a concept called human marbling. Okay, steaks, you've seen marbleized steaks. You know that can happen to your body. You don't want it to happen. I mean, suppose I mean, this is kind of a bad thought, but if you're a little baby, if you had a baby and you had to do surgery on that baby, would you like to see a bunch of fat in the muscle? No, and intuitively, you're listening there and you're not even talking. You know that that's not good. But when it comes to eating steak, you know, you see all that fat in there, you think it's probably good. So I'm going to challenge your thinking about that. And then we're going to talk about the dad bod. And I'm going to expose why that is so bad. The dad bod goes away when you go carnivore if you do it correctly. So we're going to be talking about that. The epidemic of sarcopenia. Sarcopenia is a loss of muscle tone. Okay, so it's not only tone, it's mass, and it's also performance. So the muscles do not work as well. And then we're going to cover the issue of medical photographs a little bit. All right, well, let's go to it, okay? MRIs. We're going to look at some MRIs, and we're going to take them right at the level right here, right through the center of the abdomen. You can kind of think of it right around the belly button. Really fat people might hang down here at the belly button, but that's about that area around lumbar 3. We're going to take a look, and then we're going to look at axial cuts. Okay, so this plane right here, and this is what it looks like: an axial cut, an image, MRI image. And on MRI, fat shows up as white, and CT shows up as black. But on MRI, fat is white. Muscle is dark, so it's the dark stuff. And so are the organs, okay? So internal organs show up as dark inside that, but everything else, it's white, is fat. So that's important for us to take a look at. We're going to be optimizing muscle to fat ratios, and that's what I'll be talking about. Now, what is the difference between visceral fat and all the other kinds of fat out there? Okay, so visceral fat is the stuff right in the middle of your abdomen, around your viscera, your organs, okay? So it is in the center. And the sub-Q fat is subcutaneous, just below the cutaneous structure, so underneath the skin. It's that pinch and inch kind of fat that you can feel underneath your skin. And so lots of people confuse subcutaneous fat with visceral fat, and they lump it all together called belly fat. Well, belly fat, you don't really know, is it visceral fat or fat on your abdomen that you can grab rolls of fat? And we all know those kind of people, rolls of fat. And so it's a big difference. One is metabolically active and it causes disease, it causes inflammation throughout your body. That's visceral fat. And the other one really isn't. That's subcutaneous fat. You can think of that as just extra energy, kind of like fuel tanks on the outside of your body. Subcutaneous fat really is not the problem. It is visceral fat. So visceral fat, to distinguish it from subcu fat, is painted red here. Subcutaneous fat is painted yellow. And basically, when you have an excess of subcutaneous fat, it just means you are consuming calories in excess of your metabolic needs. So, and it deposits there. But you can also do that and eat the wrong kinds of food and live the wrong kind of way, and that excess calories are going to be stored as visceral fat and promote disease. And that's what we want to end. We want to stop that. All right, let's look at, I want to teach you guys how to read visceral fat, because doctors aren't going to read it. Why? It's not taught in medical school. Because if it was taught in medical school, doctors might tell patients about it. And if patients found out about it, they might get rid of it. And if they got rid of it, they'd get rid of their disease. And if they got rid of the disease, gig is up. No more big money for big pharma. No more big money for big healthcare system, big medicine, and big healthcare insurance. All of those want to make money off of disease. So pay attention to your visceral fat. Get rid of it and watch your disease process go away. In fact, if you're listening today and you have any medical condition, whatever your complaint is, Put it in Google, put comma, visceral fat, and see probably a number of studies that are out there saying how visceral fat is associated with or is causing your particular condition. And you've never been told about it. But it's in there in science. It's just, shh, let's not let the doctors know about it. Let's not anybody know about it. But you can find it in this day and age in the internet on the highway of information. So try that, look at it. So I'm going to teach you what's good and bad. Good, all right? This is an abdomen cross section. That's a thin person, okay? That's a friend of mine from Army National Guard. He's got a very oval shape like some of you had when you were 18, 16, 20 years of age. Nice, tight little abdomen, and you're in great shape. This person also has very big muscles. See those big muscles? Nice developed. They got a six-pack, nice shape. Compared to this person, they're the same age. Look at the amount of visceral fat inside of this person compared to my friend Gabe, who's got very little visceral fat there. This person has a huge amount of visceral fat. So this person has a condition called, is obese, but their muscles, do you see how small their muscles are? Their muscles are shrinking. So when we see a lot of visceral fat, the influence of visceral fat causes atrophy of your muscles. So when you got a lot of visceral fat, that metabolically active visceral fat, it is going to degrade the mass, the density of your muscles, and also its performance. And we'll get into what that looks like, but you can start imagining if your muscles aren't working, that's a bad thing. So this person has two conditions: sarcopenia, loss of their muscles being degraded, and they have obesity. So sarcopenic obesity, super bad combination. You want to be aware of it. Gabe does not have anything close to that, and that's what you want. So muy bueno, muy mal, okay? Good, bad. So you have that in your head. Let's go ahead and look at very interesting study. It's all over the internet. I've talked about it, but quickly here, I'll cover it. This is visceral fat inside the center. This person has muscles here, but you see the fat deposited in those muscles? The fat also that you get deposited in your visceral fat here, that process also causes fat within your muscles. It's a medical condition called myostenosis. So this visceral fat also causes deposition in your muscles. And if you got fat in your muscles, like I talked about before, that is bad stuff. So lots of visceral fat here, 68-year-old guy. He goes from here at the beginning of his study to here in 2 weeks. And you haven't even gone to medical school. This might be the first time you're seeing it, but you can tell right away, it looks like he's lost visceral fat in 2 weeks. Well, he goes from here to here, a little bit bigger. Can you see that? And the MRI can detect that visceral fat, and the patient, it was shared with the patient, hey, you put on more visceral fat. What did he do? He started cheating because he had such great results in 2 weeks. He thought he got this and he could go back and cheat. But the MRI do not lie. The MRI will catch this. So we were able to show that, hey, what you did to cut out that visceral fat that worked so good the first 2 weeks, you compromised it here. And he admitted, yeah, I did. I cheated a little bit. So then he got serious because the MRI don't lie. He got caught. And look at the dramatic reduction of his visceral fat between here and here is 35 weeks. So he gets a six-pack. He grew muscles. Got this great shape from being a barrel. He looks like a 68-year-old guy. He looks like a beer belly sticking out there for a 68-year-old dude. Pretty typical. Ran a company. But one thing this guy wouldn't do for me is he would not exercise. So this was a series of scans that we did for the National Science Foundation. And this guy, frankly, ticked me off because he would not exercise. But now I'm really glad he didn't, because now we had this great study that shows he only did one thing. And that one thing he did was he cut out processed foods, mostly processed carbs. So if you really want to get rid of visceral fat, this is the most significant thing. If you think you're going to do it just by exercising, you are shoveling sand against the tide. You have got to change your diet. So this is where carnivore comes in, is so powerful. And 6,000 people that we studied different ways of eating, the diet that works the best, the strategy that works the best to eliminate that visceral fat is carnivore, cutting out those carbohydrates. Okay, made a significant difference. And not so much exercise. Now, exercise does have a big big role in this, but not at the exclusion of processed food. So, and the other thing to point out is that remember that red streak, in those muscles here, the myosteatosis. Look, it's all eliminated here. So as you eliminate visceral fat, you eliminate that deposition of fat within the musculature, that human marbling. Now, this was an interesting scan. This is on a marathoner. A guy did 8 to 10 marathons a year. You can see he has very little sub-Q fat. So he'd pinch an itch. He had like nothing. If he, walked around the beach and had a bathing suit on, he looked like he was pretty fit. But inside of him, he was filled with visceral fat. So he had invisible obesity. Okay, so this is what we call TOFI, thin on the outside. He's very thin on the outside, but fat on the inside. These people are at increased risk for mortality, higher rate of death associated from heart attacks, strokes, from that elevated visceral fat. You actually find people that have the same amount of visceral fat, but have more sub-Q fat on the outside, are not as much at risk as people like this. So TOFIs, if you're thin outside, you're walking around today and you don't have much fat, but you got a lot inside, you don't know it, you could be at a significant elevated risk for bad outcomes. So you want to know how much visceral fat you have, and you can't be pinching yourself. You can't tell unless you get a scan, an MRI scan, take a look at that. All right, well, let's take a look at a couple other MRIs. This is a MRI again through the abdomen, lots of visceral fat in here, but this guy was also a runner. He was running 10 miles a day, 5 days a week, and we got him to stop running and simply sprint. So he at the time was eating a keto diet, mostly meat, and we got him to stop his distance running and do sprinting. And just from that one intervention, in less than 2 months, he eliminated a significant amount of visceral fat. So if you're going to exercise, you want to get rid of visceral fat, the best form of exercise is not distance running. It doesn't look like distance running, from my experience anecdotally, causes visceral fat. It makes it refractory to elimination. Somehow the body from that distance running wants to hold onto that fat, probably because of the energy source it represents, and it doesn't want to really burn it off. It just keeps adding to it, so it stays in there. But sprinting tells the body, hey, you don't want to have extra weight. Get rid of the extra weight because you're running as fast as you possibly can. And you can't run as fast as you possibly can if you're carrying extra bricks around. And you can do distance running, carry those extra bricks around if it's a fuel source, but running as fast as you possibly can from sprinting, that sends a messaging molecule through the body to burn fat. So do carnivore, cut out carbs, and sprint. Those are some key concepts. Those are the take-home points here. And you build muscle and get rid of fat. That's what myokines, messaging molecules, that get released when you do sprinting, tell your body to do. Burn fat and build muscle. All right, well, let's take a look at myosteatosis. Besides seeing in the abdomen, we figured out that it is in other areas. Okay, so here's another subject who sees me, who's actually a client, pretty recent one, and he's filled with visceral fat here, and we took scans through his legs, okay, through his femurs, that's like through his thighs, okay, so we have cross sections through his thighs, that's his femur. The white in the middle is bone marrow, because bone marrow has a lot of fat. If any of you carnivores are eating bone marrow, you know that. So the fat shows up as white. But look at all this white stuff here. That is human marbling, okay? That's the human marbling deposition of that fatty infiltrates, myosteatosis, in the musculature of the legs. And we see this pretty uniformly. If you have it here, we'll see it in all the skeletal muscle. Wherever we scan, we would see this infiltrates of fat being deposited in there. Where do we not see it, okay? We don't see it in skeletal muscle of people with very little visceral fat, okay? Here's a guy with very little visceral fat. Now, you might see that white down there, but it's retroperitoneal. It is not visceral fat. It is behind the abdomen, not included. But this little thing that looks like Idaho is a teeny tiny little bit of visceral fat. This guy is the best abdominal MRI I have ever seen to date in my medical career, over 25 years of practice in medicine. He had the very best abdominal scan I've ever seen. Beautiful, thick, enormous muscles. Like compare the muscles here. This guy hasn't lost any muscle because he had no visceral fat, right? He has fantastic muscles. And look at his legs compared to this guy. Road maps, white infiltration like crazy. Very, very lean muscles. This guy has subcutaneous fat. This guy has nothing. So he is really the picture perfect specimen of health. So that visceral fat is associated with deposition of fat in your legs and skeletal muscle. Well, let's take a look at the really good guy. This guy here that had the best abdominal scan and had those fantastic legs, best I've ever seen. This is what he looks like. So he's an Olympic sprinter, okay? Sprinting is a wonderful intervention. It is my favorite form of exercise. Eating meat and sprinting. That's a killer combination with fermented foods. So I always add in fermented foods. That's my deal. I'll get into it in just a little bit. Hopefully we have time. But meat, fermented vegetables, which Dr. Sean advocates, and sprinting, okay? So great muscles. The thing here is he, at this time of this discussion, did not lift weights. He did not do push-ups or pull-ups. He only sprinted. So if I can get you guys to sprint, pay attention to your arms, to your chest. What happens? Your muscles fill with blood because you use them when you sprint. Because it is, my opinion, the hardest exercise in 10, 15 seconds you can possibly do is sprinting. Nothing else will get you more short of breath that I've ever found than sprinting. So it's a wonderful, brief, highly intensive exercise to optimize your body. All right, so let's take a look at the guy, remember, who had the really bad abdomen and all the road maps, all the white in his legs that was above the best abdomen. This is what his belly looked like, right? He had a big belly that stuck out. And after we got him to go carnivore, cut out carbs and start, sprinting stuff, look at that abdomen. And this is just 5 months. So 5 months change from here, total dad bod, to this. And in between here, he fathered a child and he's 63 years old. So things turned around for him, and he's super excited how well that they turned around. All right, so let's look at marbling. You've seen this marbling on steaks. This is a grass-fed, 100% grass-fed, grass-finished steak, and this is a grain-fed steak. So carbohydrates, you should eat a species-specific diet. Cows should be eating grass, not grains. Now, if you're a rancher and you make money off, then give them grains because they're going to fatten up and make you more money. But if you're human and you're going to be eating that cow, you want it to eat what it should be eating, not some foreign diet, which is grains and causes the inflammation. And that's what we see in humans. You eat grains, you eat carbohydrates, that deposition of fat goes into your muscle and it goes into your viscera and causes your visceral fat. So I want to show that to you so you're aware of it. I know there are some people in the carnivore community that say you don't have to eat grass-fed. But I have noticed after studying it that we get less visceral fat and less steatosis. And I think it's because this muscle, when it's not grain-fed, is still higher in omega-6s and it has more of an inflammatory makeup. There are probably studies that we need to focus in on that, but I'm telling you, if you're here, you're my friend. Cut out grass that isn't cut out meat that isn't 100% grass fed. Now, having said that, hey, eat this. I'll eat this every day in lieu of something else like carbohydrates or vegetables or tortillas or bread or pasta, spaghetti for sure. Okay, and occasionally I do eat. I mean, sometimes Sean is traveling and I cannot get access to 100% grass fed, so sometimes I do have to eat some grain fed beef. And so, I'll do that if I need to eat. I'll eat that grain-fed, but I'm always looking for grass-fed beef, okay? All right, let's look at some other scans. What else happens when you go on carnivore diet and you cut out those carbohydrates and you start eating healthy? All right, so these are the right and left lung fields. In the middle of your lung is your heart, okay, center of your chest. Remember, fat is white. So what's all this white stuff, all this fat around the heart? Well, that's heart fat, pericardial fat, around the heart. So a big chunk of fat around that heart. And from here to here, this was the guy who just cut out processed foods now. He didn't run, he didn't exercise 1 minute in 35 weeks, that guy. He largely eliminates his heart fat in just 13 weeks, okay? 13 weeks. From here, big chunk of highly inflammatory fat around the heart gets eliminated there. So visual stimulus, take home point, get rid of visceral fat, cut out carbohydrates, cut out processed foods, start living appropriately, and you lose all this bad fat in your heart or bad fat in your body. So not all fat is the same. Remember, subcutaneous fat is not metabolically active. It's visceral fat, fat in the muscles and fat around the heart that is the problem. So gave you a great little primer on how to get rid of that and what it looks like the muscle. Well, let's talk blood vessels. Let's back away from muscles a little bit. The heart is a muscle. And let's look at the vasculature. Okay, so this is my favorite scan of all. Okay, if you've seen this again, it's just, it's just super important. Maybe you didn't get it the first time, but I want to make sure that it gets covered here. So these are the cerebral arteries. That's a fancy term for brain arteries. So these are arteries in your brain. You think arteries in your brain are important to you? Yes, they are. If you get a problem with your artery in your brain, it will either kill you or cause a stroke. And so you really want, or lead to dementia. So you want to have good blood flow to your brain. Okay, so we noticed in our study, 6,000 people, as we were getting rid of visceral fat, they kept saying, I'm getting more intelligent, my memory's better. Why is that happening? When you get rid of visceral fat, do you get more intelligent and your memory improves? So we started scanning the brains to try to figure it out. We did 6,000 abdominal scans. We only did about 30 brain scans because it was right at the end. And this is what we found. What did we find? Well, do you see how the blood flow is nice and dark? And then right here, it gets hazy. That's because there's a plaque here, some blockage, and not as much blood flow goes through there. But look on this other side here with the big white circle, big hint. There's like no blood that you can see in there. Now it does pass through there weakly. It trickles in and fills the artery distally further out. But that is no bueno, okay? You got a big plaque like that in your brain, you're very susceptible to strokes. And this is the number one site where strokes happen, the middle cerebral artery. So this guy, we got him to follow our protocol at the National Science Foundation, got him on meats, got him off carbohydrates, got him off processed foods, got him sprinting. Okay, this is the guy who was formerly the runner, okay? The distance runner, 5 days a week, 10 miles a day, 50 miles a week. And we got him to sprint, okay? And so what happened? He opened up this middle cerebral artery, so it's flowing much better. And this one completely opened up. Look at that. Wouldn't you like to go from this bad situation to this one? So that's what we find out when we do these MRIs and doing these interventions. So super important. You want that blood flow, blood flow, blood flow, blood flow. And then we notice when these blood flow opens up, perfusion all over the body improves. And so one thing that happens, you get visible pulses. We see patients, we're getting visible pulses. Now I got clients coming to me all over the world, and we have a website, we got a little chat room, and I'm so excited. Clients, start getting visible pulses. Their pulses literally become visible. And that's very, very important. You want to see your pulses, not just feel them. We don't see them today because we're so filled with visceral fat. And the fat that's in the viscera that gets deposited in your skeletal muscle, there's a third type of muscle. We saw muscle in the legs, skeletal muscle, and then muscle in the heart. That's cardiac myometrium, cardiac muscle. The third muscle is smooth muscle in your arteries and veins. So I can't say for sure, but this is what I suspect is that same deposition of fat that occurs in those other areas is occurring inside the muscle of the smooth muscle of these arteries and veins. And it's preventing the nice, blossoming, smooth, softening of those arteries. They get hard like PVC pipes instead of hose, and less blood flow goes through. So you get rid of your visceral fat, go on the carnivore diet, sprint, and you'll start to get blood vessels too. And blood flow everywhere means better skin, better appearance, all your organs are better. And for you guys out there, erectile dysfunction, you'll get better erection. And something else very interesting will happen to you. besides getting a more firm erection, you will get an erection with a pulse. And you had that when you were 16, 17, 18 years of age. And if you're sitting here listening to this for the first time and you've never, and that's gone away, it just slowly goes away, you don't notice it. But my clients get that back, my male clients get that back, okay? That pulsatile flow to an erection from the enhanced blood flow, that improvement in the vasculature. So that's something to be, excited about and look forward to, that improved blood flow. We see these visible pulses and that happens, but also, the outside of your skin improves. So this is my own face here filled with visceral fat. And at this time, I actually weighed less than I weigh today. And in my picture here, I just put up there to compare it. So very inflamed face. And this isn't fat. We used to scan people's faces. We see there's not really fat in there. It's just inflammation. And the muscles don't hang right properly on the cutaneous bone. So you hear the expression, get in shape. You got to get in shape. You have better shape of your body. Well, you want a better shape of your face. I challenge you, walk around malls and you're going to see very inflamed faces. You're not going to see faces like this unless they're like 16, 18, 20-year-old young people, okay? We don't have an older population this kind of shape anymore. And you lose it not from old age, because this guy here and me, I'm not old. I mean, well, actually, I guess I am old. I mean, from the standpoint, age is just a number, but I'm just a few days shy of turning 60. So here and here, I have got rid of my visceral fat, and so I have a better shape. Here, I still have it. So go back and look at your pictures when you were 14, 16 years of age. You'll see you had a better, more attractive looking shape of your face. Today, you're probably filled with visceral fat, even though you've gone carnivore. Maybe you still aren't, the other causes of visceral fat are poor sleep, stress, alcohol, and then chronic exercise, running. So you got to do the carnivore diet, that's help, but those other areas, poor sleep, stress, alcohol, and chronic exercise, distance running, or anything you're doing a lot of can be problematic and interfere with that visceral fat leading. So your face is an important marker outside the body, and told you to get into it. All right, mentioned the dad bod at the beginning of the lecture that I'd get into. Okay, so I'm going to expose the dad bod and what's going on. Now, this is obviously a dad bod, but you might be in here and you may have an abdomen like this. This is another friend of mine, the Army National Guard. He's got his jeans on. He's wearing his official Army belt here. Really shouldn't be doing that, but that's okay. We're borrowing his photograph. And look at his abdomen, okay? This is my friend Alex. His abdomen, so he's got a fairly tight little waist here, but do you see that angle right there? He's got a little bulge. That's an early dad bod, okay? And Alex is in his 30s. He's a fit guy, super smart guy. And he's got that early bulge. So you may have it too. And it's bad. It's not as bad as the other guys, but it means if you're young and you got this going, or at any point in your life, you have this condition of a dad bod. So let me try to expose what is going on with my own photographs. Okay, this is me before carnivore. This right before I go carnivore, and this is me about almost 4 years after being on carnivore. Okay, so first highlight right here. Okay, do you see my abdomen sticking out there? That bulge, that's sort of like Alex's, right? Bulging out there. And so we call this the sagittal abdominal diameter. In the sagittal plane, what the diameter is at that particular point. Now, I've lost that. My belly's sticking out there. My belly's not sticking out here because carnivore health got rid of that visceral fat. Now here, when I got scanned, I didn't really have any visceral fat inside of there. It's not, the problem isn't visceral fat pushing it out. Now, certainly it is in some people, but in this case, my abdomen, you want to know what's going on here? My stomach muscles have been weakened by all the visceral fat that I had previously, and they couldn't do the job of keeping my guts in. That's what it is. It is just your intestines pushing out, not fat. Now, in your case, you may be filled with fat, but if you've lost a lot of weight, and some of you are sitting there listening to this, and you still have this bulging abdomen and you're not happy about it, it's because those muscles have been damaged from years of visceral fat. It is years of exposure. You can't just drop visceral fat in there and think it's just going to cause harm. It's the accumulation of all those inflammatory molecules, because it's metabolically active and it's causing all this problem that leads to this kind of protuberance of this adamant. So, and just taking it out isn't going to get rid of solving all your health problems either. It'll stop the accumulation of more, but you got to start living healthy, and then your body will do the job of repairing itself. So that's what happened. No visceral fat. I had previously a lot, but no visceral fat here, no visceral fat here. But then my body recovered because I wasn't causing any more harm. And I was sprinting, and I was optimizing my sleep, and I gave up alcohol, and I reduced stress in my life, and I started eating ferments, and I did a sauna, and I did cold plunge, and all these other things, and getting sunshine and things that people are finding out about are really good for you. But now, do you see the shape of this? This looks like a typical 60, 70, 80-year-old guy that you might see. I always use the example, go to church, because it's where you see older people in church. But you can walk around a shopping mall and see some old people if they're brave. But, usually in church, they make the effort. They may not go to a shopping mall, but you can see this S-shaped curve. I mean, you guys know that look. And little old ladies that walk around, like this, and little old men, that shape. What's going on there? I'll tell you what's going on. It's myosteatosis. It is the inflammation of chronic exposure to visceral fat that degraded the musculature of that individual, and now they can't even hold their spine up. This was happening to me. Look at that. My neck crooning forward, getting my S shape to my abdomen. It's a horrible look, isn't it? My wife, I always laugh. My wife says, never show anybody that picture. She hates that picture, and for good reason. I hate it too. But I love it to be able to show people, to challenge them to the ravages of visceral fat and sarcopenia and how it destroys your beautiful health. Now look at me standing tall, looking good, okay? Because my muscles are working straight and appropriately. You look at the average guy, I'm 60 now, just about a few days shy. The average 60-year-old does not stand erect. Now I'll let you in, because most of you are a little bit older. When I give this lecture to the Army National Guard, I'm still active in the Army National Guard. When I give this to young soldiers, they can't believe it. They can't process it. You know what they tell me? Oh, sir, it's just because you're slouching in this photograph. That's what they think. They cannot conceive the fact that their bodies, their muscles are going to fall apart, and that's going to happen to them. But some of you, it's happened to you, and it's going to happen to them too, unless they find out about visceral fat and we start doing our job and teaching people about it, and also, highlight carnivore. It's probably the best way to get rid of visceral fat. So the other few interesting things, if you look at my veins here and my veins there, vascularity dramatically improved, in between these photographs. Even, I don't know how can you explain it, the appearance of my head. It looks like I got a new head, doesn't it? I had a head transplant and I didn't have to go through surgery. That's what optimizing your health will do for you. So significant better tonicity of my muscles. Do you see how the muscle tone is better? And that's all it is. I don't really have more muscle in my abdomen, and I don't have less fat. It's just those muscles are working better. They're holding me upright and straight and erect, and they're holding my guts in. Now the job's getting done, and I have a posture and a figure like a 16-year-old, 20-year-old, a younger person, okay? And you will too if you biologically optimize yourself, starting with carnivore, and do the interventions at the end that I'm going to tell you about, all right? So dramatic improvement in my appearance between these two photographs. All right, let's look at something else. I told you some new content. Look at these two faces, okay? I'm going to ask you a question. How long is the time difference between this guy here and the same guy here? How long would you guess, okay? You can hopefully see that there's a difference between this face and this face. This face looks quite a bit improved. How long did that take? Maybe you'll guess, I don't know, a year, six months, 1 month, 6 weeks, whatever, what would your guess be? I have to tell you what the answer is. It's astounding. This photograph, more than any other photograph, has consumed my brain with thinking about it because it's so scientifically insightful to me. From here to here, 3 days. 3 days. How did that face change this much in 3 days? What did he do that changed his face that much? Well, it's stuff that you probably have heard about people doing, but it's very significant what happened to this guy. And I'll tell you why it was so much more in him than the average person. This will not happen to me. And it's not going to happen to you in 3 days unless you're like him, okay? From here to here, what did he do? It's what he didn't do. He didn't eat. He fasted. He did an extended fast, 72 hours. And by the way, it was his first one. First 3-day fast. He just went and decided to do that. Now, I guarantee if I saw he was a client came to me 6 months ago, and he was filled with visceral fat. He had a lot. I should have brought his MRI scan. He had a lot of visceral fat. In the last 6 months, he worked his butt off to get rid of his visceral fat. And as a consequence, he eliminated so much, he was really healthy. So when he did a fast, he had a much better result. Let me highlight that again. You get rid of visceral fat, your body becomes healthier. And then when you get exposed and you do something, you get a better result. What does that sound like? I want you to think about all the young people out there that go to the gym and lift weights and put on get this fantastic muscle. Then I want to ask you guys and women, how come when you go to the gym, you're not putting on that fantastic muscle? Let me fill in the blanks for you. What's going on is your body is no longer as healthy. If you did the exact same workout as that 18-year-old did who puts on that muscle, you're not going to put on the muscle like him or she, whoever they might be. You see a lot of women and their young people doing lifting weights in the gym. It's fantastic. So let me amplify it a little bit more. So they're more healthy than you are. It's not because they're young, and you're not being kept from putting on muscle because you're old. You're preventing yourself from putting on muscle because of visceral fat, okay? It has destroyed your body and your capacity for responding to it. So if you go to a sauna, if you do a cold plunge, if you fast, if you sprint, if you exercise, your response as a human being will be better if you don't have visceral fat and you're more healthy. And you can lose all that visceral fat and still be damaged because you haven't recovered from the physiological effects, the metabolic insult of that visceral fat. But as you do recover from it, then you get these dramatic responses where your face dramatically improves. And what does that mean? For an older guy and woman who gets rid of their visceral fat and recovers, guess what's going to start happening? Yeah, you are going to defy everybody's expectation for an old person. You're going to start putting on beautiful muscle, and you won't need to do testosterone. You won't need to do human growth hormone. You won't have to do performance-enhancing drugs and steroids and these other things that other people are taking exogenously to try to make up for it. I've never taken any of that stuff. So let's take a look. Look what happened to me, okay? This was me before Carnivore and right before I went Carnivore, and this is me today. Now, Sean Baker is doing this. Not entirely sure how he's doing it because I do a lot of things besides just eating meat. But one thing is definitely happened, and people argue with me all over the internet because they don't believe me. They think I'm doing steroids. They think I'm, doing testosterone or hormones or something. I'm not. I am not. I swear to God, I'm not Liver King here. I'm not selling supplements. My job, my passion is just to reverse chronic disease. So I'm just telling you this, that we are figuring out how to get older people to respond like younger people. So I put on this muscle mass from here to here. I'm 55 and I'm 59 here. 5 years I put on that muscle mass significantly because I got rid of that visceral fat and I've healed my body from the influence of it, okay? And big strategy was that was going carnivore. All right, well, let's take a look at some other examples, okay? This is another recent client of mine, subject came to me. He's filled with visceral fat here, okay? This guy is awesome. He says, he calls himself, I won't say what his name is, but he said he died after he left my office. He died on the way back to the airport. He killed himself, the old way of living, and he followed my strategies. And look at it from here to here. This is just 3 months. He lost that dad bod in 3 months. This guy is awesome. He is like all over trying to get everybody else to do what he did. So fantastic. But let's look inside of his body in 3 months. What happened? Okay. So these scans, the MRI don't lie. Remember that big belly that he had? Look at all that white stuff in there. Got a huge amount of white inside, huge amount of visceral fat. And he goes from here to here to here, loses the majority of his visceral fat in just 3 months. Okay, just 3 months. And again, I'll cover those strategies, what he did. But chief among them was cutting out processed foods and carbohydrates and going carnivore. So huge change. And then this is his heart. Okay, big chunk of fat around his heart. So from here to here to here, mostly eliminated his heart during the same time. So get rid of that visceral fat, you get rid of the heart fat and the muscle, the fat that's in your muscle. So it's a wonderful intervention. And this was his face. So he went from here to here, much better perfusion. That's one of the interesting things that happens as you perfuse. Your lips get, better shaped and more color and oxygenation to them. And so the face improves. And that's just in 3 months. My face from, before in this particular image here, boy, that thing's, what happened to my face? But my face from before changed. That was really over a period of 11 years. So this guy's face changed in a much shorter period of time, just 3 months. But your face will change as well as you get rid of bad things that are causing you harm. So let me just show you. This was me age 30. This is me in my about 45, and this is me 48. Okay, so this is me accumulating visceral fat. Okay, pretty good here. More visceral fat, and look at that facial change. Okay, this is pretty normal. Everybody's face gets worse. Go LinkedIn. If you're on LinkedIn, do you put your recent photograph in? No, use an old one because you look better back then. Not if you do carnivore and do what I'm telling you to do, get rid of visceral fat. You target visceral fat, you're never going to put your old photograph in there. You're going to want your most recent photograph because it's going to always be getting better. Okay, so get rid of that visceral fat. And this is what happened to me. So after this was me. And then I start getting rid of visceral fat here. I look better here. And then there's that photograph again. So the telltale sign of an enlightened human being biologically optimizing themselves is that their appearance continues to improve, because that's a sign of health. My definition of health is appearance plus performance. So it's not just looking good, but performing good as well. You want to improve your appearance, you want to improve performance, and carnivore is a great strategy for doing that. So get out your old photographs is what I'm telling you to do, and look at how you formerly looked bad. And if you are taking carnivore, watch for the change and see how you're improving, and get rid of that visceral fat, and you're going to improve even more. So carnivore is a great strategy. There's other things to do, and I'll try to cover that. So besides blood vessels, seeing your visible pulses, another thing happens is huge hair growth. So when you get better blood flow to the skin looks better, and you start growing hair again. Interesting that their study shows the amount of visceral fat you have, or fat around the heart, corresponds to thinning of your hair. Male pattern baldness is associated with fat around the heart. They don't tell you these kind of things, but yeah. So I would start getting rid of visceral fat around the heart if your hair is thinning. My hair has gotten really thick, since I got healthy. And look at my about 300% increase in my hair on my legs. So I got youthful, hairy legs, if that's important. I don't really see any value to it personally myself, but I'm glad that my blood flow is better, my legs and thinning's gone away. Well, let's take a look at some other cutaneous manifestations. So these are eyelids, okay? Spider veins. The technical term for this is telangiectasia, spider veins. You women, some of you have been to vein clinics trying to get rid of your spider veins because they look ugly. Well, the reason why they look ugly is basically they're telling your biology you're not healthy. And they might tell male suitors that you're unattracted to. So a real quick way to take a look at, see if you got them on your eyelids so you can track this. So this is a guy who came to me a year ago, started doing strategies, carnivore and things I'm going to be telling you about at the end, and he got rid of his spider veins. So they're on eyelids, quick and easy place to find them is on thin skin. So thin skin is also for guys on your foreskin. So guys, you're unhealthy, you've got a lot of visceral fat, you're going to have all these spider veins, purple, gross, disgusting veins on your foreskin. They'll go away and you'll start having attractive looking, clean skin down there as well, which is important. All right, so this is a bad scan here. This guy is filled with visceral fat. When he had this scan, and I showed him a good scan and a bad scan, this guy passed out, fell down, hit the floor, went completely unconscious because the power of seeing, he was a tofi. He thought he was thin. He walked around pinching it. He passed out when he saw actually what was inside of you. That's why I want you to get an MRI scan. Take a look inside. Don't do a DEXA scan. You want to see inside. And then I told you about CTs. If you've ever had a CT, and many of you women have, because we overdo these things, this is a CT scan, and in a CT, visceral fat shows up as black. Fat shows up as black. So you can go back and demand to see your CT. You're going to read it because the radiologists don't read it. They don't even know how to read it. So you read it, take a look at your visceral fat in the past, and you can see how much visceral fat you had. And again, an MRI today. Why do you want to get an MRI? One, it's better resolution. Two, there's no radiation, so it's safer, to do it. Get an MRI. All right, so there are my strategies. I'm not going to take the time, but you can screenshot that, freeze frame it, and you can see all the strategies that I recommend. Okay, to eliminate visceral fat and optimize yourself. So I'm very excited again to have been invited to come and speak at the Carnivore Summit. I'm sorry I had to speak so fast to cover this stuff, but I had a hard time, getting all the important points covered, and I want to make sure that I covered as many of these important topics as possible. So at the beginning of my slides were all my contacts, but you can you can reach me at my website at www.drseanomara, www.drseanomara.com, or on Instagram or Twitter at drseanomara, or on YouTube, Dr. Sean O'Mara on YouTube. I have videos. So, all right, well, thank you very much for first coming and participating in the Carnivore Summit and being a part, being carnivore. Go out, advocate, get as many people as you possibly can to go carnivore, be evangelists for health. And secondly, thank you for watching this lecture, and give me feedback. Give me some tips. This is my passion. You got some ideas how I could do this lecture better, or what else to cover? I'd like to hear about it. Give me the good and give me the bad, okay? All right, well, thank you very much. You guys have an awesome time.